This month's theme has been cultivating relationships, and today's service was possibly going to be called Moving Beyond the Garden. So I knew early on that we'd be talking about the wider world, and I would need to think about relationships outside my everyday comfort zone. When I come in contact with people I don't know, people who may be very different from me, I try to demonstrate kindness, respect, and open-mindedness. I would like to think I put away judgment and assumptions, but do I completely? The world we live in today, in so many ways, is constantly telling us to be afraid of the other. Race, religion, politics, of course, and now vaccination status and masks. Does unacknowledged fear or slight suspicion keep me from interacting with others the way I wish I could? I hate to say it, but sometimes it might. But it doesn't have to be that way, does it? We have so many examples of all kinds of people coming together in a crisis or for a shared cause. Opening my mind and heart to all gives me a tremendous opportunity to learn, to grow, to be better, to do better. Going to Kenya last year, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was a joyful experience in a totally different culture. And I did embrace the people I met along the way and at the orphanage. And they embraced me right back. But I initiated that contact, so I went into it expecting wonderful things, and that's what I got. Not everything is quite so simple. We are all in this together, right?
Right.
I hear that a lot. Not that all white liberals are in this together, or that all Muslims are in this together, or all immigrants, or all the unvaccinated. No, we are all together here on this beautiful earth, trying to live and love and learn. Every time I hold out my hand in some way to a stranger or someone different from me, and I try to understand and be of use, I am doing a good thing. This is a shared world, and all is not lost.
I'd like to invite any children or any young at heart forward to join us for our Wonder Box this morning. Holly, do you want to open the Wonder Box for me and see what's inside? All right. Let's see what we have. There you go. What's in there? Oh, well, I'm a good reader, but this is sheet music and I don't know how to read that. So I'm going to see if I can give it to Louise and she can give us a hand. I do remember now that there is music in our story today, so perhaps that will come in handy. This is the story Because by Mo Willems and Amber Wren. You might know Mo Willems from Elephant and Piggy. Because a man named Ludwig wrote beautiful music, a man named Franz was inspired to create his own. Because many years later, people wanted to hear Franz's beautiful music, they joined an orchestra. Because a man had practiced since he was a kid, he was asked to join. Because a woman studied night and day, she too was asked to play. Because many others loved and practiced their instruments, there were enough musicians. Because someone created a poster about Franz's music, tickets were sold because the train conductor stopped the train at the Grand Concert Hall. The orchestra conductor arrived. Because the orchestra librarian had copies of the score, the orchestra rehearsed. Because workers checked the lights and the seats and swept the floors, the grand hall was ready. Because the time has come, the ushers opened the doors. Because someone's uncle caught a cold, someone's aunt had an extra ticket. And for someone special, because the usher helped the aunt and her special guest, they found their seats. And because everybody was there to hear beautiful music, it was quiet. In row C, seat 14, the girl with the uncle's ticket. She heard the beautiful music written by the man Franz, and it changed her. The girl was changed. From that moment on, the girl learned everything she could about music because it fed her. Soon she started to write music too, because like Franz, the young woman had something to share. Over time, the woman became very good because she worked very hard. One night, her music was discovered because she was also very lucky. Then she was invited to perform her music at the Grand Concert Hall because so many people wanted to hear it. Her composition was dedicated to the uncle in row C, seat 14, because it was his ticket that brought her here. And that night, someone else was changed. That's how it happens. Well, our story, because, continues right in this congregation with you, with me, with Louise. Because a family friend's daughter could not attend, Louise was invited to a concert by the Chicago Symphony with the fabulous young pianist Van Cliburn, because she continued to study music at Indiana University and learn many instruments. Louise was asked to direct music at various churches. Because she found her spiritual home at UUCCI with friends who share her values and welcome her beliefs, Louise has enjoyed taking turns as volunteer pianist and directing the occasional choir. Because this congregation values music as a vital part of worship, and because Louise loves helping others develop their musical talents, she is honored to be your first paid music director. Because I never lost my sense of wonder and curiosity, I've remained a child at heart, as you can see today, because I wanted to find a spiritual home where my children could ask questions, come as they are, and be invited to live into their values daily. I found Unitarian Universalism. Because this congregation paused during the pandemic to think about what their hopes and dreams are for the children, youth, and lifelong learners here, I was thrilled to join you this summer to serve as your children's ministry coordinator, where shared ministry is centered.
Whoever's the parent of that kid, they have some energy issues. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal, after learning my flight had been delayed for hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor, wailing, "Help." Oh, wailing, period. "Help," said the flight agent. "Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late and she did this." I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly, "Slu dawa, shu biduk habiti, stani shwe min fadilik, shu bit sewi. The minute she heard any words she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there. Just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some more Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took about 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts from her bag. I was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice and huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves. Such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant, always stay rooted to somewhere. And I looked around the gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in. This is the world I want to live in, the shared world, not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. This month, we have been exploring the theme of cultivating relationships. And I always wonder if, as a congregation, we understand why we engage in these different monthly themes throughout our years together. Ultimately, these focused months are not meant to be a checklist, like cultivating relationships, check. No, it's not meant to be like, been there, done that, asked and answered, consider it done. Instead, I like to think of these themes as checkups, not checklists, but checkups, because the themes we explore continue to reemerge throughout our lives, and they hold different meanings and challenges depending on the situation and time and place. This month is no exception. The notion of cultivating relationships is not a, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Nor is it a, no, I'm not good at that, but thanks anyway. Rather, relationships are a part of the very essence of life, regardless of whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, a minister or a computer scientist, whether you are young or old or anywhere in between. On this Halloween, there is one more layer to add to our 5-Sunday exploration of relationships, and this is answering this question. How do we cultivate relationships across lines of difference? How do we cultivate relationships not just within our in-group, but with people and communities beyond our comfort and familiarity, beyond our cultural knowledge and experiences? In order to explore this angle of cultivating relationships across difference, I want us all to board the bus, that's bus with 2 U's, and head on up to the Indianapolis International Airport. Now, the airport may be a foreign place for many of us. In fact, some of you may have never been on a plane or haven't been on one for many years, or at least during this pandemic. But I want to let you in on a little secret. Airports are more than what they appear. Sure, airports are where you go if you want to go relatively, and it's all relative, relatively quickly from point A, let's say Indianapolis, to Washington, D.C., let's say to go save our democracy. That's another sermon. But that travel happens mainly beyond the airport, beyond the terminal, beyond the gates. The airport, the port itself, is sort of a whole different deal, isn't it? Flying is great, or it can be, but the airport part, that can be quite another thing. In my intro to anthropology course I took during my freshman year of college, we were assigned what I later realized was a somewhat obscure reading assignment. It was called Changing Planes, and it was written by Ursula Le Guin. Any Ursula Le Guin fans? I knew Chris would raise her hand. What's surprising, perhaps, is that Le Guin is most known for her writings of speculative fiction, including science fiction and fantasy. And yet, it may be precisely for these reasons that Changing Planes was an assigned text. You see, Le Guin is a world builder. She creates worlds, and this is exactly what is present in this collection of short stories and vignettes that each stand alone and offer a different world, oddly familiar, and yet with some real and sometimes disturbing differences. Changing Planes is set in an airport, and it follows the main character, Sita Dulip, as she waits for her connecting flight. The twist is, and the title's play on words suggest this, while she waits for her delayed flight, she has the opportunity to make quick trips to other planes of existence. Changing planes. Anyway, the airport itself is just this insufferable reality, according to Le Guin. Listen to this description in the opening chapter of her book. Quote, "If both you and your plane are on time, the airport is merely a diffuse, short, miserable prelude to the intense, long, miserable plane trip. But what if there's 5 hours between your arrival and your connecting flight, or your plane is late arriving and you've missed your connection, or the connecting flight is late, or the staff of another airline are striking for a wage benefit package, and the government has not yet ordered out the National Guard to control this threat to international capitalism, or the airline staff is trying to handle twice as many people as usual, or there are tornadoes or thunderstorms or blizzards or little important bits of the plane that are missing, or any of the thousands other reasons, never under any circumstances the fault of the airlines, mind you, and rarely explained at the time, why those who go places on airplanes sit and sit and sit in airports, not going anywhere. In this, probably its true aspect, the airport is not a prelude to travel, not a place of transition. It is a stop, a blockage, a constipation. The airport is where you can't go anywhere else, a non-place in which time does not pass and there is no hope of any meaningful existence, a terminus, the end. The airport offers nothing to any human being except access to the interval between planes. Oof, that's doesn't make me want to go on a trip. Now, to be fair, Le Guin draws such a contrast in order to set up a difference between the airport and where the airport can take you. But what I think Le Guin misses is the recognition that the airport is not just a stop or a transition or something in the way, but in reality, a world in and of itself. The airport is a place in and of itself. It is a plane of existence filled with existence, with life, and often quite a diverse amount of life. I used to travel a lot when I worked for the Unitarian Universalist Association in their stewardship department. For about 2 years, I would travel about 10 to 12 days a month. During this time, I would spend quite a few hours waiting in the airport. And let me tell you, the airport is indeed a place where you come across a lot of differences if, and this is a big if, you're willing to look around, open your ears, and experience it. I can't explain it better than what Naomi Shihab Nye offers us in her beautiful poem titled Gate A4. She retells a true story from her life, a story of a group of diverse people stuck together due to a flight delay. What unfolds moves from immense chaos and confusion to complex harmony and even communion. It begins with language barriers and cultural differences, and it leads to a communication and understanding that surpasses language itself, as communicated by the deliciousness of homemade mamul cookies, complete with powdered sugar and crumbs galore. What visions she paints for the reader. Unless you think the experience in the Albuquerque airport is an exception to the rule, Naomi Shihab Nye ends her poem saying encouragingly, "And I looked around the gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in, this shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all the other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost." I think sometimes we or I can fall into the trap of universalizing the particular. By this, I mean we take a particular moment or news story or year in the life of a pandemic or a US presidency, and I or we extrapolate it outwards to be not so much normative, but prolific. We say, it is hard to do this or that because when I tried this or that one time, it was hard. And so this or that is now, matter of factly, hard. Period. Cultivating relationships across differences does not need to be paralyzing, does not need to be overwhelming, simply and most importantly, because as Pam said, we are all here in it, in this airport, this terminal, this life that is indeed terminal, this port, this transporting space from one moment to the next, from one experience to the next. We are all here on this plane, moving ahead in this plane of existence. And as we wait, we are able to consider what we make with our lives during this waiting. We can think of this waiting like a stop, like a layover, like an insufferable requirement of the journey. Or we could think of it as our shared world, our shared space, where yes, there are many structural issues of power and domination, cultural differences, and big stumbling blocks to experiencing the full sweetness of the life we share, the life symbolized in a home-baked cookie offered out of compassion and earnest longing for connection. We are able to not sit and stew in our own garden of our making at our own gate, walled off from the rest of the world, from what is just east of us or west or north or south. We are able, and I'd say, I invite you to not merely wait for your connecting flight, to not merely wait for connection, for an opening with one another or with Godot. No. At UCCI, we are cultivating the very tool, the very courage needed to cross the lines of difference in humble and thoughtful ways. The work of our racial justice team comes to mind, and the very tangible skills-based offerings they have been sharing this fall. And I think about our interfaith campus partnerships and the physical spaces that will foster not blockages, but freedoms, not blockages, but freedoms to cross lines of difference and to connect in this life. And I think of all of you, Unitarian Universalists, seekers, people of all backgrounds. You have come here with different beliefs and experiences. Each of you have chosen to make a life that is loving here in this community. You have chosen to not just wait for the life hereafter, but to make life right now in this time and in this space. May our waiting transform into living. And may our living lead to loving ourselves and one another and those beyond our immediate circles of care. And may our care grow more wide and deep with every breath, with every cookie, and with every day we share in this life. May it be so, and amen.